before. Hey, what's up, Rough Cuts? It's Jim. Today is Tuesday, and today's film is Roadgames. Roadgames is a 1981 film directed by Richard Franklin. It stars Stacy Keach and Jamie Lee Curtis. Stacy Keach is playing a truck driver who, one night when he's trying to sleep in a motel for the night after a long truck ride, him and his dingo are trying to get into this motel, and someone beats them to it. Then the next morning, the dingo notices by the trash he keeps clawing at it, and then like the guy who went up and took the motel room keeps looking at it, and it's like 4 in the morning. And, you know, he's up because he's a truck driver. Then he goes and he has to pick up this meat. Stacy Keach's character, Quid. And Quid picks up the meat and he's driving to Perth. This film takes place in Australia. Now, even though it takes place in Australia, Stacy Keach is an American in Australia. Why, I don't know how he got there. That's not important. But he's a truck driver, an American truck driver in Australia with a dingo. It's a very quirky idea, but it works really well. And Stacy Keach has such an expressive face. The way, like, there's a lot of this movie is looking at things and like reaction shots, and he can pull that off, but he's also so great with the dialogue. Stacy Keach's eyes are just like amazing when he's looking at stuff. He really projects that fear, and his character's such like kind of like a bookworm, like nerd, know-it-all type of guy, and he speaks almost in, like Jamie Lee Curtis, his character says like, you speak in poems, and I think that's very true. He's too smart for his own good sometimes. He doesn't actually know how to talk to people because he's alone, like with his dingo Boswell all the time. And I feel like that's part of a truck driver, is you're alone, you're isolated, and it really captures that. As Quid is driving, he keeps noticing this green van, and it'll like pick up hitchhikers, and it picked up a hitchhiker before, and then, you know, there was the garbage bags and the hitchhiker was gone, and he keeps hearing on the radio about like a slasher, like a Jack the Ripper type character on the Australian roadways. As Quid picks up a hitchhiker who's like this annoying lady, but when he's alone, Quid talks by himself, which could get really irritating. But for a film that's just basically in a small, big rigs, like truck's cabin the whole movie, it's amazing that I was so wrapped up in it. For like, it's not a very great location, even though they're showing you these amazing locations of like Australia, you know, outside of the truck. Even though he's speaking, which is very, when you speak, it's very external, obviously. It feels very internal when he's in his truck and he's driving with this four-wheeler down on this Australian highway. You feel very isolated with him. He gets obsessed with it, and then he picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's actually interested, and she gets involved, and then they go and solve this mystery. Now, this movie, Richard Franklin is a huge Hitchcock fan. He directed Psycho 2. He knew Hitchcock. In fact, the way he met Hitchcock is he was actually trying to organize a screening of Rope, and somehow he ended up talking to Hitchcock and convinced him to come to Australia and speak. He's obsessed with Hitchcock. The screenwriter of this film, Everett DeRoche, came to Richard Franklin and said, you know, it would be a great idea that you take the plot of Rear Window and have it take place in like a moving vehicle, and thought that would be really interesting. And him and Richard Franklin developed the idea. Roadgames is taking the format and the idea of Rear Window. I mean, you have various people you see while he's driving, because you see cars, he looks at cars, he kind of makes fun of them sometimes, but, or you see a guy on a motorcycle, and you'll see him later at a rest stop when they stop, or later on in the movie. So much like how in Rear Window you see all those people in the apartment buildings, like the girl and like the married couple and like the dog downstairs, like, you know, all those people. In this film they do that with the cars, which I thought was really original. Jamie Lee Curtis, you could basically say, is playing like Grace Kelly from Rear Window, and Stacy Keach is playing Jimmy Stewart. It's a different take on Hitchcock, because they always said Hitchcock came to film sets in a suit. This film is a less buttoned down, like more like working class version of a Hitchcock movie. You know, I feel like Richard Franklin wears kind of the crap that I wear. That's probably why this movie really appeals to me, to be honest. Quentin Tarantino especially likes this film. He considers it his favorite Australian film ever made. As a teenager, he wanted to write a book on genre filmmaking, and one of the people he was going to interview for it was the director of this film, Richard Franklin. The score is done by Brian May, not the guy from Queen, but Brian May. He's an Australian film composer. He did the scores for Mad Max and The Road Warrior, and I really like the score for this. I think it embodies the whole, even the character of Quinn that Stacy Keach is playing. And this also kind of reminds me reminds me of the Spielberg's first film, Duel. I love that he has a pet dingo in the film, and like that's his best friend, and just sits there like being like licking itself and stuff, listening to him, and he's talking to the dingo. I like that about this movie. I really like the dingo. I wish more people saw this movie, and like Mondo had a kick-ass poster of it with Quid holding Boswell on a leash, like, and Boswell's like all like growling and stuff when he's like fighting off people. People are always trying to get his dingo, and he always defends Boswell, which I was like, thank you very much for watching, Rough Cut viewers. If you'd like to subscribe to my main channel, do so in the link in the description, and follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, and potentially VHX. Also, special thanks to Earl Barrett Holloway for making me the picture that is at the beginning and end of this video. You should also go to his Tumblr as well. Can you hear the rain right now? I don't know.